Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and let's read some classic sci-fi together. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that one of my goals for the last 2 years was definitely to read more classics. And in doing so and exposing myself to more classic books, I realized that I think I really like classic sci-fi. And so in order to discover if I do so and also hit a couple of our fantasy bingo prompts, I wanted to read some classic sci-fi that I have laying around my shelves. So in this vlog, you will see me read The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a book that follows a scientist named Shevik who travels to another planet in order to reunite the two opposing societies. War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This is the classic of all classic sci-fis, I feel like, and it follows an alien invasion in England. And then the last book I read for this vlog, which is The Midwitch Cuckoos by John Wyndham. This follows a group of women in this like quiet little village of Midwich who one day wake up and they are all mysteriously pregnant. So I will take you back to Kelsey 1 week ago when I started these books and we'll come back at the end. Hello, welcome to the first clip of this vlog. I'm very excited for this vlog because if you watched my goals for this year and last year, I want to incorporate more classics on my TBR throughout the year so that I could be reading more of the classics that I have physically. I've been focusing a lot on like your typical classics, so what would be like literary fiction of its time. And I'm slowly realizing as I'm reading through classics that I should be reading, I end up really enjoying the ones that are very like classic sci-fi, sometimes classic fantasy, but I find like classic sci-fi is really giving me what I need. So I want to put that to the test with this vlog. The idea for this vlog additionally came when I was, if you watched my like failing the Our Fantasy Bingo vlog that I did a couple of weeks ago, one of the prompts for this year's Our Fantasy Bingo is to read a classic sci-fi from the 1970s. I believe in the hard mode is to read one written by a woman. And I realized that I had a book like that on my physical TBR already, which is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. I have read from Ursula K. Le Guin before. I read the first book in her Earthsea trilogy, which I did not really like. I read that for a fantasy class I took in university. I also read The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. It's somewhere on my physical shelves of like read books. And I read that for a classic sci-fi class that I took as well in university. I think I need to reread The Left Hand of Darkness because I believe like I was just too like stupid and young to fully grasp what I was reading. The Left Hand of Darkness, what's really interesting about it is that it is a researcher who goes onto this planet and he realizes that this planet does not have like genders, or more that they are more gender fluid, and he incorporates himself into this society. So as someone who also has a degree in anthropology, I feel like I want to go back and read that book, and I don't think I read it to the best of its capabilities, or at least like what it has to offer. The reason I'm feeling so passionate about this as well in that decision is because I'm really liking The Dispossessed. So this has kind of a similar premise to The Left Hand of Darkness, and I'm realizing that they are coming from the same series. So I feel like it's probably like scientists visiting other planets in a sense is probably what this series is focusing on, because they are all books that are not following one another. Like it's not a series in that sense. They're just a series of standalones that take place in a similar universe. And so I feel like that might be the common thread, because so far within The Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness, that is what is going on. So in here we are following a character named Shevik, and he is from a planet called Aras. The planet Aras was formed of utopian anarchists. Shevik has taken a like missionary trip in a sense to go to their sister planet Eurus, which seems to be like the capitalistic version of it. It is described as a civilization of warring nations, great poverty, and immense wealth. Shevik is going on this mission to the planet of Eurus to reunite and mend the two civilizations who have spent like centuries in distrust of one another. And what I've been really liking about the first 5 chapters that I've read, so I'm on page 126, is that we are sort of discovering how Shevik has grown up on this like anarchist utopian society, and how his beliefs placed on this more capitalistic society are introducing these conflicts within not only himself but the relationships that he's having obviously with the other scientists on the planet. He grew up in like a commune with other children. Basically they all had the same rights, the same opportunities. They weren't treated any differently based on whatever gender they identified as. And when Shevik goes to Eurus, he realizes that women are not treated as equals on this planet. They don't have the same opportunities to become scientists, and this is like a conflicting ideology that Shevik doesn't really understand, because he's like, but they all have brains, like we're all equivalent, which is obviously a nod at current society still, but definitely probably Ursula K. Le Guin was emphasizing her timeline, which is the 1970s. Sad that it's still the same, but So I'm going to continue listening to this. I am enjoying it. I want to get another third of the way through today so that I can update you before tomorrow, where I have quite a busy day. My weekend is definitely really booked, as it is every single weekend. I don't feel like I ever get a break, but I do want to tackle at least 3 books in this video, and I am starting this vlog really late. It's already Saturday, and I like to finish my vlogs on Mondays, but it doesn't seem to be the case ever. So we're going to push this hopefully to the last day possible, which is Wednesday, and hopefully we can read at least 3 books. I would love to read 4, but based on how this one is going and how I'm really just savoring the writing, I feel like we're only going to tackle 3. So I'm going to continue listening to this. My baby is taking a nap right now, so we can kind of just chill before we need to go to another baby's second birthday party. So I will see you later. Hello. Maybe I should lower the television actually, because the Habs just won. Very exciting stuff for the island of Montreal. Um, sorry. I like to watch hockey really loudly. I'm gonna try to do this quickly, but I did get another third of the way through the Dispossessed, and I really want to update you because I really want to finish it. Maybe tonight. I'll only update you tomorrow, really, anyways. As expected, still really liking it. I don't know how else to talk about it because it's really, I think, a more philosophical book. As Shevek is spending more and more time in the society on Eurus, he's starting to learn the intricacies between the gender dynamics, the intricacies between class structures there as well. He's also starting to discover people who critique his planet of Anaris, and how this idea of the utopic society, the utopic anarchic society of Anaris is worthy of critique, and how it might not be as wonderful as Shevek thinks. And we do gather that because there are no animals on the planet of Anaris. So Shevek is very interested in animals. He likes the idea of them, but also because Shevek could be labeled as a traitor for leaving Anaris to go to Eurus to have this mutual meaning and understanding to hopefully unite the world. And so being deemed a traitor coming back is very interesting, because for a society that is supposed to be free, how free can you be if you are being judged, shunned, if you come back, if you can even come back? Like I said, it's definitely more of a philosophical novel rather than a plot heavy novel, and I think that might be why I'm enjoying it a lot. I don't tend to like extremely fast-paced plots because I enjoy pondering, thinking. I really do appreciate wise words when a novel has words to highlight. I think in retrospect I regret not pulling out annotations for this earlier. I have a bit of a problem where I can't start annotating a book 20% of the way through. I'm well, I should have been annotating from the beginning. There's so many interesting conversations about communism versus capitalism, even though they don't use those words necessarily. It is the discussions that are being had, and also obviously the gender dynamics. As I watch LGBTQIA plus rights and women's rights being stripped away from them around the world, it is a very interesting conversation that Ursula Le Guin was having in the 1970s on a futuristic planet where you would think these things wouldn't exist, but she was right on the nose that they still do. So I'm going to continue listening to this tonight. I really hope I can finish it. It's only 10 p.m. I don't go to bed until much later, but I had a really exciting day at my sister's bridal shower. So I was really busy all day long, and it went successfully. My sister was really happy, so I'm very happy about it. And also the Habs won, which is just a happy day overall for Montreal. I'm just going to continue listening to that, go to bed. We'll probably update you in the morning, then we can start my second classic sci-fi. Hello, I'm here to update you because I finished the Dispossessed this morning, and no surprise here, but I ended up giving it a 5 stars. I think it was so clear from my last few updates that this was just incredible to me. I was in between when I was deciding how to rate it, a 4.5 to a 5 stars, because I had a slight issue with the dual timelines. It took me a bit of time to realize we were in a new point in the timeline, that we were in a different part of Shevek's life. And so sometimes I would find myself waking up sort of from the audiobook trance, being wait, hold on, where are we? And realizing that I wasn't exactly following the same plot points in the novel. But I definitely think that this is one of the best books I've read this year, if not a couple of years now. So I can't not give this a 5 stars, because I could see myself rereading this and giving it 5 stars anyways. So I think if I would have just paid attention a little bit more, I would have caught on to the difference in the timeline. So I just said, fuck it, let me give it a 5 star. Reading this at the same time that I am currently reading Karl Marx's Capital, I think was so fitting and really enhanced the experience for me because, as mentioned, we are following two of these different planets that have these very different political atmospheres. I feel like Le Guin always writes really interesting philosophical science fiction novels when I'm finished to continue thinking about them for a really long time. And I feel like that will be the same for The Dispossessed. There's really, really thoughtful discussions in here on the aspect of like freedom, of utopias and what makes a utopia, of like class structures. And I really liked how the novel moved between the two timelines to discuss the two opposing political structures that we have. Ures, which is where Shevik goes to hopefully like unite the two planets, is very obviously, as I mentioned, an allegory for capitalism and of class division. Whereas in contrast, Anaris, where Shevik is from, is seen as this anarchist utopia where everyone is equal and free, kind of like how we have this idealized version of communism as well. The novel really works to examine these contrasting ideologies, and I just found it to be really, really thought-provoking. Like, I would finish listening to whatever section I was listening to and just like sit with it. And I don't do that often with books. I already want to reread this because, as I mentioned, I really, really regret not annotating this from the beginning. I wish I knew how thought-provoking it was going to be, how philosophical it was going to be, because I know I would have highlighted so many passages in here. I would have annotated so many things. So I already know that I need to give this a reread. It could possibly be this year. I don't know. I'm definitely in a very like communist phase of my life. So we'll see if I end up giving this a reread, but 5 stars. So happy I read this. And we completed a prompt for the Our Fantasy Bingo, which was to read a book published in the 1970s. And the hard mode for that prompt was to read a book written by a woman. So we have completed that prompt. I'm very, very excited because I, as I mentioned, really like classic sci-fi. So I'm excited to move into the next one. And I think I've read 2 other books from this author, and I think I might as well read the book that introduced me to him, kind of, with The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. So The War of the Worlds, I think I watched, when did this movie come out? The one with Tom Cruise. 2005. So in 2005, when I watched this movie, I would have been 12 years old. For some reason, who did I watch this with? Why was I watching it? Why was it not rated R? I was so scared of this movie, and I would have panic attacks at night that I would wake up. You know that scene where Dakota Fanning is like sleeping and she wakes up and the camera's like in front of her face? I was that would happen to me, that I would wake up in an alien invasion and like a camera was looking at me. To this day, I think it did something psychologically to me because I still sometimes like think about it when I'm going to sleep. And I don't know, it really, really scared me. I have heard that the book is not that scary. In fact, the book is not similar to what we saw in the movie at all, except for maybe the beginning with the invasion. So in this one, armed with terrifying killing machines and heat rays, the Martians arrive in London and quickly subdue the British forces. Faced with extraordinary odds and a world changed beyond all recognition, nothing less than the survival of the human race is at stake. Very, very ambiguous. I'm extremely interested to finally read this. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for years, obviously because the movie with Tom Cruise was so ingrained in my brain. I think what I'm going to do, because it's so short, it's only 190 pages. I think what I'll do is read the first half, come update you, and then read the second half with our summary. Maybe I could read this before the end of the day. I don't know. I'm going to go to the gym right now. I was waiting to just film this vlog clip after a couple of meetings. I'm going to go to the gym and then we'll see how far I get before I update you again. I have my chia seed pudding. I'm going to be eating it. I had a pretty busy morning, so I haven't had a chance to. It'll be like my breakfast lunch, I guess, brunch, because I'm going to Pilates class for lunchtime. I'm going to get a protein smoothie while I'm there anyways, so I'll be, I think, fairly satisfied. But I did want to discuss, I got halfway through The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. And what I think is really interesting about this book is, as I was filling it into my like spreadsheet of all the books I read, I noticed that this was published in 1898. And I think it's incredible to me. This is not my first H.G. Wells. And every time, the way that he is able to conceptualize a future that is coherent enough for the people of the time he was writing it and us is incredible to me. I looked up a lot of things because I was like, how does H.G. Wells understand so much? And it comes from his background in not anthropology, but his interest in Darwinism and the understanding of like evolution and stuff like that, and where our humanity could go forward. He's able to like conceptualize that in an interesting way, which you do see in his other book, The Time Machine. He has a person visit a futuristic society where there are 2 different groups of isolated people that he meets, and they are based off of characteristics from humans. So you can see how H.G. Wells understands Darwinism and how the survival of the fittest would affect the people in the future. And you do see it here, but I think here it's more of an understanding of like technological advancements. The first page you're immediately hit with his complete understanding of science, because he talks about the planet Mars. He talks about what they expect Mars to, he's writing it in a way of like truth, but it's how they expected Mars to be. So they understand sort of the way Mars would be conceptualized at this time due to Earth being in front. It must be a little bit colder. Like he talks about these things that I think are so fascinating because, and maybe this is really like dumb of me to say, but I just can't believe that people of this time were having an understanding of planets when they don't have the breadth of scientific advancements that we have and the breadth of telescopes that we have now. So I just think it's really, really interesting. But as for the story, I'm surprised at how similar it is to the War of the Worlds movies. I was really expecting the War of the World movie with Tom Cruise and Dakota Fanning to be very off from this, but it's actually quite similar, except for the fact that in like the American version of the movie, we have like much more of like fear of technological advancements, fear of war, really. And here I looked it up as well. It's more of a discussion on imperialism and how the British Empire would react if they were getting invaded, much like how they invaded other countries. So H.G. Wells is really trying to show the British population how the people that they've invaded must feel and to understand why they would want to distance themselves from the British Empire. So I find that to be really, really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of invasion stories are tackling this innate fear to be invaded and taken over and not have like a right in what's happening to you as a person. And I appreciate that H.G. Wells was trying to show the British population what the fear at which they are imposing on others. Where we are right now, we have the invasion slowly making its way towards London, and I have a feeling the London aspect of this invasion will make it a more grandiose story. But yeah, really, really liking it. I like the writing. I find H.G. Wells to have very simplistic, but it's like palatable language that I think it transcends, obviously, as it is a classic, transcends time. Like I said, it feels like this could be written today. It feels very real, very scientific. So I'm going to continue listening to this while I work. Obviously, you've heard my team's conversations in the background and while I eat my chia pudding, but I definitely think I'm going to finish it today because I sped through the first half. Hello, I'm feeling quite lazy, so I hope you don't mind this like angle, but I did finish The War of the Worlds today by H.G. Wells. As I suspected, I did really, really enjoy this in the end. I gave it 4 stars. I found this to be a really fascinating read, not just for the story, but the way that it was crafted by H.G. Wells. Firstly, as I mentioned, I simply cannot believe the breadth of knowledge that Wells has, or possessed had rather, because he's dead, and how well I found this novel to transcend time. Like, I don't think that me in 1898 could have imagined what he imagined and write it so eloquently. Like, if I think to myself, oh, let me like predict how the future will be, I feel like the world is just so disastrous right now that I can't even imagine. But he was like more, I don't know if positive is the way I want to say it, but definitely better at imagining and critiquing a reality that could be. I loved how this novel was both a scary science fiction novel and, as I mentioned, a critique on British imperialism. Wells does a really great job at discussing colonialism in a way that's really critiquing Eurocentrism or British centrism, really. The way that the Martians acted and behaved was interestingly similar to war tactics that ended up being used in World War I and World War II, which this novel is written before. You can also, like I said before again, definitely see how Darwinism affected the way that Wells would imagine a Martian species coming here. Because in the end, even though these aliens have this advancement in technology that the humans don't have, the idea that Darwin's idea of the survival of the fittest ends up being what wins. And the Martians not being succumbed to nature, to the human being reality, is the saving cause in the end. I am surprised also at how palatable Wells's prose is. Nothing was difficult to understand or follow, and I found the cadence of his writing to add to an overall pleasant experience of listening to this and reading this. So I had a great time. This is probably one of the oldest classic sci-fis I have on my TBR, and I could say that it was really successful. I really, really, really enjoyed this. So we're going to be moving into the last sci-fi book. I decided I'm not going to read 4, I'm just going to read 3, and that is The Midwitch Cuckoos by John Wyndham. I don't know how often I mentioned this. The first book I read from John Wyndham, which is The Chrysalids, is probably one of my favorite books of all time. I read it when I was in Sec 4, which is like grade 10, 11, and I still think about it to this day. Like, there will be random days in this current year that I've thought about The Chrysalids. I have reread it, solidified it as a favorite. I just think John Wyndham was much like, actually, with H.G. Wells, ahead of his time. I'm excited to read the Midwitch Cuckoos because I believe that this is referenced often in like modern satire, so like in The Simpsons or whatever. In the sleepy English village of Midwich, a mysterious silver object appears and all the inhabitants fall unconscious. A day later, the object is gone and everyone awakens unharmed, except that all the women in the village are discovered to be pregnant. The resultant children of Midwich do not belong to their parents. They are all blonde and all golden-eyed. This is what I remember from The Simpsons. They grow up too fast and their minds exhibit frightening abilities that give them control over others. This brings them into conflict with the villagers, just as a chilling realization dawns on the world outside. So I'm reading this because it was brought up in the R Fantasy Bingo like suggestions for the prompt older protagonist. The story features a main character who is at least 50 years old, and the protagonist does not have exceptional longevity or immortality. So, like, they're not an elf, dwarf, whatever. And this came up, and it should hit the hard mode. So hopefully while I'm reading it, we get the age of the main character. Very excited to pick this up. It is one of the oldest John Wyndham books I have on my TBR, and the one obviously that I feel like I know through osmosis of culture, but I don't actually know the story. So I will be starting this probably later because I do need to leave soon to pick up my son from daycare, and then I have to get started with like dinner and all of that. But I will be sure to update you when I can. Hello, I just came home from picking up my son. Hopefully you can hear Curious George in the background. I've got some orders to share. So the first is that I finally got my April Aardvark book box. I got it a bit late because I joined the second ordering of Japanese Gothic by Kylie Lee Baker. So I'm really, really, really excited about this. This takes place in two timelines. So the first is October 2026 when Lee Turner doesn't remember how or why he killed his college roommate. The details are blurred and bloodied. All he knows is that he has to flee and go to the one place that might offer refuge, which is his father's new home in Japan. Something is terribly wrong with the house. No animals will come near it. The bedroom window isn't always a window, and a woman with a sword appears in the yard when the night falls. And then the second timeline is in October 1877. So Sen is a young samurai in exile, hiding from the imperial soldiers in a house behind the sword ferns, which is exactly where the house in 2026 is located. Really excited for this. I pretty much enjoy anything from Kylie Lee Baker that I've read, so I doubt Japanese Gothic with that really interesting premise is going to be any different. So I had this already pre-ordered in January, but when I saw that Aardvark was doing it for their book box, I was like, perf, we're going to order it. It sold out in seconds. I was disappointed. I was like, ugh, okay, whatever. Maybe later I'll look at the other books available and choose from that. Got an email saying they were doing a second printing. Here we are. That's why I came late. And then the second book is another really exciting. Why am I holding this swinging? It's a really exciting pre-order from another author that I absolutely love, autobi author for me. So let's get this open right now. Oh my god, it's so much thicker than I thought it was going to be. But this is The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee, who is the author of the Greenbone Saga, one of my favorite trilogies. And as soon as I saw that she was releasing a new book, I knew I had to get it right away. Do I know what it's about? No, because I just pre-ordered it knowing that it's Fonda Lee. On the merciless planet of Aquilo, where your job determines your worth, legendary swordsman Isako commands the highest price, but every legend must come to an end. When her longtime client unexpectedly retires, she plans to follow, to walk out into Aquilo's frozen wasteland with her head held high and her family enriched by her death. But when she's offered a final mission, one she can't refuse, especially when she realizes who lies at its center, Mardim, her last and worst apprentice, who somehow made it his way to the very top. I don't even care what this is about. It could be Fonali's grocery list and I would read it. So those are my two recent like acquisitions into the household, and they don't count for the book buying ban. Why? Because they were pre-orders. Thank you. Hello. So last night I got 1/3 of the way through the Midwitch Cuckoos and I was about to fall asleep. So I was like, you know what? Let me put this down. We'll update in the morning. And it's such a short book that I do think I'll probably get the next 2/3 of the way through. So I just wanted to update you on my initial thoughts before I have to go to my spin class this morning. So far, we haven't really explored a lot in the book, despite the fact that we're 75 pages in. That is outside of the initial synopsis. Basically, there was one night where everybody fell asleep, and as soon as they entered like the borders of the town, they fell asleep. We are following multiple older male characters, which I think is really interesting because they are the ones that are not getting pregnant. So they are sort of treating this as like a weird isolated event, which it is, but not really taking into consideration the way that the women must be feeling until we got to the last chapter that I just read, where we have the town hall meeting, and it is being run by one of the women in the town who is expressing to others the fact that they are all pregnant, that she knows that they are all pregnant. They need to come together as sort of a community to protect their unborn children because reporters and stuff will likely want to come in as one town just totally fell asleep. And then all of a sudden, there is a child for every single childbearing aged woman. And obviously, that would be interesting and weird. And so they have to kind of discuss how they can keep it internally so that their children are not sort of treated as science experiments. What's interesting is that we know that this turns into more of a horror tale. So the children end up, I think, treating the adults like science experiments of some sort. We'll see how that goes. That's where I'm inclined to believe it's going to go. And I am really interested. I like John Wyndham's writing style because I find it to have a very like older, almost Victorian cadence in his writing, even though this is written in 1950. And that makes it feel like we are following this like quaint, small British town, which I think adds to the overall ambiance of it. And it reminds me, obviously, of the like references I've seen of this book, that they are always little British children. And I think this is part of a collection of works that have like instilled this fear of little British children in, I think, the surplus of media that we've consumed over the last like 100 years or so. I'm going to continue this later. I think right now, maybe I'll listen to a bit actually before I just realize what time it is. I have plenty of time before I go to my spin class. So I think I'm going to listen to a bit of that while I'm working. I just need to analyze a couple of things, go to my spin class, and then come back. But I definitely plan on finishing this today. Hello, it is the end of the workday, so I'm here. Well, almost the end of the workday. I'm here to show you that I have 1/3 left of the Midwitch Cuckoos, which I believe I will be able to finish tonight. But let's update on the last third because it definitely got more intense since I last updated you. So, in regards to the plot, the women have given birth, and we now understand the point of the title, which is that these children all resemble one another and none of them resemble their mothers. So, it appears as though they have been born through xenogenesis. And essentially, they are cuckoos in a cuckoo nest. So if you don't know the lore of cuckoo birds, basically cuckoo birds lay their eggs in another bird's nest so that that bird will then raise the baby birds, or the baby birds might take over and eat all the other birds. So a very apt sort of metaphor going on here. Where we are right now, it has been 9 years since our main character has lived in the village. They moved away to Canada. They moved away from all of this mess. They don't want to be included. So now they're back and visiting essentially. And we see that the children have grown and they have become more powerful. So we moved from the children being born, babies being able to impulsively control their mothers to do things for them. So like to bring them here, to bring them there. And the moms can't explain this will to do things for their children. It's interesting because none of the women have like major speaking roles within the overall narrative structure. And for women who essentially had their agency taken away of what kind of baby they would have liked, what kind of pregnancy they would have liked in general, they had that taken away and they have no speaking voices in this novel. So we're really getting the perspective of the pregnancy, of the birth, and of the raising of these children from the men who are not necessarily the most involved. So a lot of the concerns that the mothers are having are sort of being dismissed as like normal motherly things. So for example, the mom saying that they know that their baby wants them to take them somewhere, they preach it as like, I hear it in my head, like I am being forced to do this. And the men are sort of like, that is just a motherly thing. Like that is just what moms do. You just know your baby. And so that conversation I think is really interesting. It's a shame to not get the perspective of people who essentially have their agency taken away. But I think the commentary of the men dismissing the women's like needs is very interesting because obviously the implantation of these alien species in the women becomes a bigger deal because the men aren't initially like making a big deal of women's bodily autonomy and what's going on to the women's bodies. So I think that that's a really interesting discussion. Like I mentioned, where we are now in the novel, the kids, or the children, capital C. It has been 9 years since the narrator has visited this town, and the children, instead of being 9, look and act as though they are teenagers. So they're obviously progressing and growing at a rapid rate. And now we're beginning to understand that as the children grew up, they sort of have like this hive mind mentality. They're learning things at the same time. It seems as though they can understand each other and what each other's wants and needs without speaking out loud. In addition to that, they are able to basically control the world around them, so they can control the beings' thoughts around them. And what was originally just their mothers that they were able to control, they can now force other people, or we can assume that they're forcing other people to do things. So, for example, a man almost hit one of the children, and all of a sudden he like drove into a wall and died. So it's insinuated that the children made him do that. What I like is that basically the point of, or the theme of this novel is that ignoring the women's bodily autonomy has led to a sort of invasion in the town of a metaphorical cuckoo bird. I have 1/3 left. I'm definitely going to finish it tonight. I don't know how much time. I have about 40 minutes before I need to leave to go grocery shopping and pick up my son. Then obviously start cooking. Once the sweet potatoes are in the oven, I do have a bit amount of time or I need to start cooking everything else. And at the same time that I'm cooking everything, I'll probably be listening to the last third, unless of course there are more important matters to deal with. That's it. So I will probably only update you tomorrow and we will be able to finish this video. All right, let's talk about my final thoughts of The Midwitch Cuckoos by John Wyndham. So as much as I'm searching for my next 5-star John Wyndham, I ended up giving this one a 4. Given that I love John Wyndham so much that I am searching for the next 5 stars, it's no surprise that I ended up really liking his most popular novel, I feel like. I saw one reviewer, when I was looking up the reviews for this book, describe John Wyndham's writing as like cozy catastrophes, and I definitely feel like that is emphasized in all of his works. And I think that that's why I always love to read them. There's something so like quaint and calm about them, and yet the most wildest things are happening. Wyndham's prose, I think, adds to this because it's very BBC special to me, like a Bridgerton type of vibe, like Coronation Street. And it makes the events that occur in the novel feel as though they are really happening. I definitely would believe that a small, quaint British village would want to hide the fact that all of their childbearing humans in the town suddenly became pregnant through xenogenesis. I found this to be a really unique take on like a first contact story, which we just read with War of the Worlds, and this felt like very different. And even though I understood what it was like through cultural osmosis, as I've talked about, I've seen a lot of this in pop culture, it still felt fresh. I still felt like I didn't know where the story was going. I appreciated the discussions that John Wyndham was trying to do in here with bodily autonomy and agency, although I think where the novel went a little downhill for me and why I couldn't give it the full 5 stars is because we did not have a POV from one of the people who were childbearing. And maybe this is coming from obviously a 2026 perspective and what is going on in the world and the loss of rights for women or people who are able to carry children. I think that a novel like this, were it written today, I would need that POV. So I'm giving it a bit of grace. Going along with that argument, I think the novel could have been a lot stronger with a wider range of POVs instead of just some POVs from retired white men in the town. So let's summarize everything I read. I would argue that this was an extremely successful vlog, and it just really emphasized to me that I do really like classic sci-fi. I enjoy the conversations that are being had in classic sci-fi, and I think that first contact or like meeting other species of like beings in planets and stuff is an interesting way to look at the problems that we have here on Earth. And I think all 3 of these books did that. So to summarize, we had the most successful book of the vlog, but I would still argue that they're all successful, The Dispossessed with Ursula K. Le Guin, where we're looking at really political philosophy that we face here on Earth through the eyes of 2 different opposing planets. War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, which I gave a 4 stars, where we're looking at really British imperialism, colonialism, through a first contact alien invasion. And then of course with the Midwitch Cuckoos, bodily autonomy, agency, first contact, having your body invaded by something that you don't know what is happening. Very apparent even now. So that's it. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know. I would love to chat about them. And if you would like to follow me on my reading journey, I always leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. Of course, you know, given the state of the world and that we still have social media and we are still able to utilize it to connect with one another, you can follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel, makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Okay, bye!